I'm Mike Farrington. Welcome back to my shop, aka the Boardroom. In this video, I'm going to be building what I would call a skateboard, but all the cool kids these days call them longboards. And for the second time in 2 videos, I'm going to be joined by my friend and fellow YouTuber, Jonathan Katz-Moses. So if you haven't built a skateboard before, I recommend you give it a try. It can be a real simple project, just gluing some boards together and putting some trucks on the bottom, all the way up to what we're going to be doing here with bent laminations and a drop-through truck design. And if you've never done a project incorporating bent lamination, don't be intimidated. It's actually very easy, and I'll break it down step by step in this video. And if doing curved work using bent laminations is something you've been interested in, a skateboard is a great starter project. So I get started by making the bending form, and that's just made up of a bunch of layers of 3/4 inch thick MDF that are all cut to the exact same curve. And I achieve this by making a jig that has the desired curve. And it also has some stop blocks so the pieces of MDF go into the jig the exact same way each time. So if you're unaware, the tool that I'm using is known as a shaper, and really it's just a router table with a much more powerful motor. But if you don't have a shaper in your shop, a router table with a flush trim bit works just as good. It's just a little slower. And this technique of making a jig with a clamp on it is great for skateboard forms, but it's a technique that can be used in any project where you need to make several of the same piece. And assembling the forms is pretty straightforward, just some 18 gauge brad nails and some wood glue. And I like to chisel off any chip out that occurs from the entry wound of the nail. After the forms are all put together, I break out a gigantic piece of mahogany and I cut off a chunk that will be sliced into some veneers. And one of the things my newly restored bandsaw does really well is resaw veneers. Boy, is it fast and smooth. And I always like to rejoint the face of a board after cutting a veneer off of it. After cutting the necessary veneer for the tops and bottoms of the skateboards, I head over to the wide belt sander, install an 80 grit belt, and proceed to smooth the veneers on both sides. And if you don't have a wide belt sander or a drum sander, a planer would work just as well for this operation. So here are all the ingredients for bent lamination. We have a form, and we have a few layers of 1/8 inch plywood, as well as some veneers top and bottom. And that gap in the center will be pressed out when it goes into the vacuum bag. One of the most important skills when veneering wood or when doing bent lamination is knowing how much glue to put down. And I think this is a pretty good shot. It shows that it's a nice wet surface, but definitely no pooling. Too much glue can cause bubbles, and it can also cause rippling. And you want to use a paint roller or a glue spreader or something to make sure that the glue is applied very evenly. Here are the boards pressed down nicely in the vacuum press. I like to leave bent laminations in for between 6 and 8 hours. And if you don't already have a vacuum bag or vacuum pump, you can buy kits for under $100 that kind of work like a bicycle pump. Once the boards are dry, it's time to cut out their shape. And I don't really know much about shaping a skateboard, so I just make a paper template with a shape that looks good to my eye. And I drew this template 38 inches long and about 8.5 inches wide. And after finding and marking center, I tape the template in place and trace it out. And as you can see, I received a grade of B+ on this project. And next I cut the shape out on the bandsaw, and if you don't have a bandsaw, a jigsaw will work just as well. And one thing to note, if you're cutting a curved part out on the bandsaw, you want to make sure that the part that is being cut is as close to the table as possible. Otherwise, the bandsaw can grab the piece and slam it down to the table. And I true up the outside edges and make sure they're nice and straight with a block plane. And wherever possible on the outside curves, I use the disc sander to true them up. And I clean up the last little inside corners with a file. And I round over all of the outside edges with a 1/4 inch radius roundover bit. But because the board is curved, the router couldn't get into all of the corners, so I come back with a file to finish off the roundovers. For this build, I traced the cutout for the trucks from a skateboard that I had built previously. But the first time that I did this, I actually just made a template with scissors and cardboard. So this is known as a drop-through deck. And what this means is the base plate of the trucks are just mounted in this hole that I'm cutting in the deck. And the point of doing this is to reduce the overall height of the skateboard. This will lower the center of gravity a little bit and therefore increase stability. And mounting the trucks in this manner unequivocally ensures that an old dude such as myself will not fall off this skateboard and break any bones. And some quick hand sanding before I apply some lacquer. I'm often asked about my spray finishing process, and I think if you're someone who's interested in spray finishing and have little or no experience, I suggest going to your local Home Depot or Lowe's and picking up a few cans of spray lacquer. It's a really cheap and easy way to explore spray finishing and see if it's something you want to dive into a little further. So during this build, I wasn't listening to any music because I had Jonathan in the shop with me, but I did have a song running on a loop in my head for some reason, and it's the song What's My Age Again by Blink 182. And for whatever reason, a song about not acting your age seemed very appropriate for someone my age building a skateboard. So if you've never heard that song, I suggest you give it a listen, and you know what? If you have heard it, listen to it again. It's still a great song. So after I got the grip tape on, it was time to install the trucks and take these suckers out for a test drive. For those of you interested in building a skateboard, I'll include a few links in the description below to a few of the products that I used for this build. So here they are, looking spiffy and ready to rock and roll. Overall, I had a blast building these skateboards. For such a simple project, they had a couple little details that were challenging, and that kept the build interesting. So my hope for this video was to inspire and encourage you to get out to the shop and make a skateboard. Even if you don't ride a skateboard, you can still make it and give it away as a gift. And why not? Finish it out with some fun shots of the shop apprentice enjoying himself on this newly built skateboard. I'd like to thank Jonathan Katz-Moses of Katz-Moses Woodworking one last time for coming out to the boardroom and helping me build a couple projects. I had a blast, and I hope we do it again soon. Till next time, thanks for watching.